Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Soccer Scene in conjunction with Sport in Limerick. And we're delighted to be joined tonight by Between the Stripes podcast presenter Kieran Burke, who would be well known for his coverage of the league, particularly on Twitter. Kieran, thanks for joining us this evening to discuss what will be a big game this week for both Treaty United and Longford Town. That'll be the main focus for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adrian. Yeah, big game, as you said. Obviously, Treaty had a game called off recently themselves, so their fans will be itching to get out and watch the team at home. And Longford Town, this is their first away trip of the season, so it's an interesting game for both teams, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose before we move on to the specifics of the game, Kieran, just to speak about Longford Town, maybe the expectations for Longford Town for the season as a whole, because obviously the club were in the Premier Division last season. To say it takes time to adjust after a relegation. It was a tough season. You've lost the likes of Irvin, who's obviously was the local hero as such, as well as Arno Driscoll has been well publicised as well. I suppose, what are the expectations for Longford? They brought in Gary Cronin as well, who came very close to promotion twice with Bray. He's brought a few players with him. So would it be fair to say that it's playoff minimum with 9 teams in the league?
Well, it's playoff minimum, yeah, because as you said, 9-team league, 5 teams, 4 get into the playoffs and 1 go up automatically. So you'd like to think Longford Town will be there or thereabouts, certainly. I wouldn't say the expectations are low, but at the same time, I wouldn't say they're overly high either. I don't think anyone's expecting Longford to challenge for the title. I think most people are certainly looking at Waterford and then maybe someone like a Galway maybe pushing them. But I think Longford Town fans just expecting a playoff spot of some description. And as we found out a few years ago, once you're in the playoffs, you have a chance. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. So if Longford can get into the playoffs, I think it'd be a good season, because they probably just need to re-establish themselves at this level after what was a really difficult year last year. You mentioned that there are lots of turnover of players. It's essentially an entire new squad. It's a new coach and staff. Gary Cronin coming in, heading that up. He's brought his own backroom staff in as well. So it's a new look Longford Town squad on and off the pitch. So it'll take a little bit of time for them to bed in. So if they can get a playoff spot, I think most Town fans would accept that.
Yeah, it must have been quite a frustrating wait for everyone involved at Longford to start the season, for the third week into the season before you can play a game. I have to say, I was very impressed by Longford and the organisation in the first game against Cork. Could have certainly won the game, that's for sure as well. Both sides had a couple of chances each, but I was particularly impressed, I suppose, with the likes of the young centre-back, Matt Dunn. He had a very good debut for the team. You had Aaron Robinson, very energetic in midfield, and the 2 full-backs were very quick to get up and support the play as well. There was plenty of positives, it must be said.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Structurally and organisation-wise, I was very impressed with Longford Town. You mentioned some players there. Matt Dunn in particular, 19-year-old centre-half, first senior appearance for the club. He was in training with the first team quite a bit last year. He was close, I believe, to getting a few games last year in the senior team. But obviously, when you're in the Premier Division, it's that bit harder to break through. So they just put him on ice for a while, and he got his first start the other night, and I thought he was the best player on the pitch. The 2 fullbacks look really, really good. Barker, that's come in from Shells, and Dylan Barnett, I don't know how Brave let him go. He looks a cracking player, as does Ryan Graydon as well. I think they've let 2 really good players go there, but they'll be great additions at Longford. And you had Mick McDonnell experience of him alongside Matthew Dunn can only help, and Luke Dennison coming into goals as well. He's been at the club. This is his 3rd season at the club, but it was his first league start the other night. He's really had to bide his time, and he was on loan at Galway last season. He got a few games there, but he'll be looking for a run of games now at Longford. But I thought structurally Longford looked really, really solid, and that's the first time in a long time I've been able to say that, because any time the opposition got the ball last season, it didn't matter where it was. If it was out on the halfway line from a throw-in, you were panicking, you were worrying, you're on the edge of the seat. I didn't feel that the other night. Anytime Cork went forward, I never really felt like they were going to score. I never felt overly panicked or worried. And I think you could see that the players on the pitch, they had a real composure about them. Now, in saying that, I think Longford fans did comment they'd like to see a bit more now in the coming games of the team going forward and getting on the front foot. I've already mentioned the big turnover of players, so I do think that'll come down to familiarity with each other, getting to know each other's runs. There was one example the other night. Town had the ball in midfield. The player in possession looked up, and the 3 players that were in the final third all made the exact same run. So there was very little options to make a pass there. So that'll just come with training ground time and playing matches together. They'll get to know each other's habits and the little movements they make. So I think this is a good chance now tomorrow night for Longford maybe to try and do a bit more on the front foot. But again, if they're as solid as they were, then it's going to be difficult for teams to score against them. So that's a good basis to build off. But I think there is a little bit of concern that maybe Longford might find it hard to score a huge amount of goals this season. So, well, they'll have to work on getting the balance right.
Yeah, I have heard you on your own podcast and other Longford people say that because it looks like Sam Verdon is the only, we'll say, attacking option to start up front for you, that is a concern, I suppose, in any season, trying to find a striker at any level to get you into double figures. Even Treaty found that last year, even though Kieran Hanlon did a very good job. He only actually came out with 6 goals and 3 of those were penalties. So, it can be very hard to find that, and there'll be a lot of pressure on Verdon at the moment, won't there?
Yeah, look, every club, not just First Division, Premier Division, and all over, everyone's looking for that 20 goal a season striker, but they're very hard to come by. You mentioned Sam there. Sam's not really a natural striker now. When he started out Pat's under 19s, that was his position. He was a centre forward, but in terms of his senior career, he's really played more as a number 10, even out on the left wing at times. But he has played up front from time to time. But his best goal scoring season was 2018 when he played a few games through the middle, and it was only 5 goals he got that season. So he's going to have to at least double that if Longford want to achieve their objectives this season. So there's a bit of pressure on his shoulders because aside from him, there really isn't a recognised striker. You've Callum Warfield there, a very young player. He's an option, but he is quite inexperienced. The only other natural striker at the club is Christian Magerson, who's come in from Bows, but as anyone knows that's been following his career, he's been plagued with injuries. He's had to have a small operation there in the last few weeks just to get himself right again. So he's going to be out for probably a couple of months. So it'll be a long time before we see him in a town jersey playing a competitive game. He did score in a pre-season friendly against Shamrock Rovers, and he looked quite lively in the games I saw him. But in terms of getting him up to full speed, it's going to take a little bit of time. So really, Verdon is the only one. So there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders this season.
Yeah, it certainly is the case. Speaking of another player where there's pressure to score the goals, a player you're very familiar with on 2 fronts. One, because he's an ex-Longford Town man, and I know he's been a guest on your show. And I suppose, speaking to a couple of people that I know, there's been a bit of criticism of In the Kern from the Between the Stripes commentators. He started off really well, Kieran, it must be said, we'll say, with the 2 goals against Wexford. Found it very difficult in Cove, which a lot of players do in Coleman's Park on that tight field. There will be a lot of pressure though, and a lot of people saying, he's coming back. Tommy says he's coming back from junior, but he's a very experienced League of Ireland player all the same, so Treaty will be banking on him to get the goals, much like Verdon for Longford.
Yeah, I can see him already now. He's probably at home in front of the mirror practicing a celebration for tomorrow night. So I'm sure he'll be straight over to the away end if he gets one. But no, he's a good lad, a good sport as well. He takes everything in his stride, which is good, and that's what the league is all about. Yeah, as you said, he's stepping back up from junior football, but it's not as if this is his first time playing League of Ireland. He's been around. He's won the First Division with that loan, and the goals he scored was very important in that. He's had Premier Division experience with Derry. He's played for all the Galway clubs as well. So look, he's very experienced at this level, and I know Tommy Barrett has spoken quite highly of him, not only his qualities on the pitch, but what he brings to the dressing room as well. He seems to be a good lad, so I'm sure he'll get plenty of goals for them this season. Just hopefully not tomorrow night.
Hopefully, maybe. But I know that I'd be interested to hear, Kieran, the views of maybe more outsiders, because obviously I do have a weekly podcast with Jason and Noel O'Connor where we discuss all things Treaty. But I suppose we were bigging up Treaty this season. Last season, we didn't know what to expect because of the fact that, it was such a quick turnaround with players. We didn't know some of the players that had signed who had turned out to have great seasons from junior level, and players that haven't played in League of Ireland for years. So this season we've said, and we have predicted on our podcast, that Treaty will finish in the playoff spots. I know Tommy was quick to point out that he feels that there's unrealistic expectations. He said to me the other night, being placed on his squad. He's quick to play it down, what his squad is. But you have to say, looking at the squad, to name players, just a few, another player you'd be familiar with, Joe Gorman. You have Joel Custrain, Conor Melody, Mark Ludden. There is a lot of experience, and Jack Brady as well in that Treaty squad. So I certainly don't think that it's unrealistic to think that Treaty will be up at the higher end of the table if things go their way.
Yeah, I suppose just to take a real simplistic view of it, I mean, what they achieved last season, Treaty, off the back of not really having a pre-season, they've kept the bulk of the squad together this time around. They've made a few additions. We mentioned Curran there, you've mentioned Gorman. Jack Brady's a brilliant replacement for Tig Ryan. Obviously, you didn't want to lose Tig, but I think you've got an absolutely fantastic replacement there in Jack, and he made a brilliant save down in Coleman's Park the other day as well. So I think he will gather points up during the year for Treaty. But they've had a proper pre-season together. The players that were there last year, they're familiar with each other. They're familiar with Tommy and how he operates. So just looking at it a kind of simplistic way like that, there's no reason why Treaty can't at least match what they did last year, if not improve on it. I can see Tommy's point of view as well, the resources the likes of the full-time clubs have, and even a club like Longford coming down from the Premier, you can see why he might be downplaying things a little bit, but I certainly don't believe that for a second. I think he'd be hopefully getting them into the playoffs for sure.
And I know that, like myself and the lads, you have predicted that it will be a draw tomorrow evening. It looks like it's all set up for being that. And to be fair, judging by the fact that these managers had 3 games against each other last season, and you know there was an aggregate of 1, I think overall there was a 0-0 draw, a 1-0 win for Bray, and a 2-0 win with 2 late goals it was for Treaty. So they were cagey affairs. Do you expect, I suppose, approach-wise, that Longford will come with a defensive-minded approach, or do you think they'll be going into the Bray game, looking to try and get their first win before their second home game?
It's difficult to know. I think they'll definitely come again with an organised approach like they had for the Cork game, and maybe first 10 or 15 minutes see how the game is going. If they have a little bit of momentum, maybe try and kick on a little bit and try and push for the win. But this just appeals to me as a game that both teams don't want to lose, maybe more so than they'd like to win. Longford have a home game on Monday night against a struggling Bray team, so that's a good opportunity maybe to get on the board against a defence that have looked very unorganised this season, whereas Treaty look like a really organised outfit. So this could be a difficult game to go and try and get on the front foot and be in the final third a lot. So we mentioned as well, or maybe we haven't yet, but I believe there might be a bit of work having been carried out on the pitch this week. Obviously with the last game having been called off against Athlone, I believe there's been work carried out on the pitch, so remains to be seen kind of what condition that'll be. Is it going to be a little bit bobbly? Is it going to cut up? Will that affect the game? So look, I don't want to put people off turning out. Certainly get out and get behind your team, let it be Treaty or Longford, but I'm not expecting a classic tomorrow night. Yeah,
we're hoping in some ways it's a bit of the old classic reverse psychology. We're probably hoping for a goal fest if we keep saying it's going to be a boring 0-0 draw. But there's going to be a lot of key battles as well, it must be said. We've mentioned a couple of the players already. You probably have your, Verdon up against Sean Gearns, Curran against probably Dunn if he does try and pull on to the more inexperienced centre back. Midfield, I suppose, as well. Dean McMenemy is a player as well who's in there with Aaron Robinson. Probably, a young player coming from Shamrock Rovers. He'll be up against Lee Devitt and Callum McNamara in the midfield as well, who are also young, keen players for Treaty. I do think, as in any game, that the midfield will probably be crucial tomorrow night in a fairly big pitch in the Barksfield. But, also judging by, you have Ryan Graydon and Eric Malloy as well on the wings. It'll be key for Mark Ludden and Charlie Fleming to get a grip on that, because, as I said, on a wide pitch in the Markets Field, you'd imagine that those players will be looking to cause serious trouble.
Yeah, I think that's where the game could be won and lost tomorrow, down the sides, because Treaty, as you mentioned, 2 fullbacks that like to get forward, particularly Mark Ludden. Big fan of him, had him on the show last year, and I think he's been a brilliant addition to Treaty, and brilliant left foot on him as well. So if he gets forward, he can cause havoc with his deliveries into the penalty box. But Longford's fullbacks really like to get forward as well, Barker and in particular Barnett over on the far side. So it'll be about who can push each other back and get a bit of dominance. Are the 2 sets of fullbacks and 2 wingers going to cancel each other out maybe? Will a lot of the play go through the middle? There's a lot of questions there, so it will be interesting to see the approach the two managers set out with tomorrow night.
Yeah, certainly. And I suppose we're looking at it now from the format of the division, Kieran. That obviously you were focusing more on the Premier Division last year. There was a lot of excitement in the fact of the playoffs. Brings real excitement in the First Division. There was a worry, I suppose, with the merger of Bray and Cabinteely and the FAI making it clear that there was going to be no team replacing them, that you'd have one less place at least in the playoffs. I think I have to say I was happy myself to see that they maintained it the way it was. And I suppose in some ways, in a funny sense, it gives, if you're not bottom of the league, basically, and maybe cut adrift, you're going to be right in the mix towards the end.
Yeah, no, I love the format myself. I know some people look at it and say more than half of the division can qualify for a playoff, but look, the First Division, as we know, unfortunately, can be a hard sell at times. So for clubs to have that carrot at the end of the year, where if they're within a couple of points of the playoffs, they can still get big crowds out there. If they get into the playoffs, you get big crowds. So I think the playoffs are absolutely crucial to trying to sell and attract people out to the first division games. So I'm really, really delighted that they kept that format. Look, 9 teams certainly isn't ideal. I don't think any set of supporters, players, managers that don't want to be sitting at home the bye weeks, that they are a bit of a pain, but that's just the way it is for now. I know the FAI have said the main reason they didn't bring in a 10th team is because they're focusing on the proposal of trying to get a third tier up and running, which I think would be absolutely fantastic, although there's not a lot of detail about that at the moment, as we discussed on our show during the week. But I can see why they went that route, and I agree with you. The 5 playoff places, the 4 playoff places is fantastic.
Yeah, and I suppose on a final note, you have your LOI commentary position as well, Kieran, which you do on a regular basis for Longford Town games in particular. It is a brilliant service, it must be said, for the League of Ireland to have this. I know for my own self, even to look at opposition the week after, it's brilliant as well. The only problem, I suppose, with it this year is that people have complained about the lack of a season pass, which would affect the likes of ardent League of Ireland fans who would have watched a lot of games last year. But nonetheless, it's brilliant that it was maintained this year.
Yeah, you would have heard if you were listening to the show during the week. We had Luke Dennison on, the Longford Town goalkeeper, and he's obviously come over from America, so he's got lots of family and friends back home, and he was just commenting on how brilliant it is that they're able to watch the games. And even for him that's come into the league, he's able to probably learn quite quickly about the league and other players and other teams by watching games on LOI TV. It is definitely a disappointment there's no season pass, because I know my parents now would have absolutely no interest in League of Ireland or Longford Town, but last season I bought a Longford Town season ticket, so the LOI TV season pass came with that as part of the package, so they were able to watch the games for free from home, and that was the first time they really kind of took a proper interest in it, so that was fantastic. But when I told them the other night they'll have to pay $5 per game, they were a little bit more cool on it. So it's a shame that we've lost the opportunity maybe to get that kind of floating or casual fan involved. But the FAI have kind of outlined their reasons why. They just felt the numbers weren't there, and it'll be more financially viable to have a match by match pass. So we will see how that goes. But certainly it's a little bit disappointing there's no season pass, and particularly for those people out abroad as well that are maybe following their team week by week. It's going to cost them an awful lot of money compared to what a season pass might have cost. So as I said, it'll probably be judged by the end of the season whether it's a success or a failure, but it certainly is a little bit of a disappointment. All right.
I suppose I'll finish on one note there. We have an announcement there, Kieran, that Stephen Kenny will be staying on till the end of the Euro 2024 campaign. Hopefully that they'll reach it, and he's obviously come out and said that is his main goal. There'll be a lot of people outside of just the League of Ireland that will be happy with that news, it must be said.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm delighted with it. I'm a huge Stephen Kenny fan. Of course, he started out with Longford Town long time ago. He's gone on to have massive success elsewhere, particularly Dundalk, and I was very close to a lot of that success at Dundalk at the time. I was up around living in Dundalk at that stage, so I got to see the buzz that was created up there and everything that came with it. It was brilliant for the town and for the club at Dundalk as well. So I always felt just he has that magic touch, Stephen Kenny, and I very much feel like he's bringing that to the national team as well. I had season tickets for several years under the Trapattoni era, O'Neill, and the football was horrific in truth. I went to a lot of the away games as well, went out as far as Georgia to watch us string together. I think it was something like 97 passes over 90 minutes, maybe even less than that. You're just going to the trips for the crack more than the football. You knew you weren't going to be treated to a real footballing spectacle. But obviously with COVID and all the rest, I didn't get to any of the first games Kenny was in charge until the recent Portugal game. And I just thought the football was absolutely fantastic. We almost got a great result that night, but I just thought the football passing out from the back, build-up play, it was really good to watch, and that's something we haven't had for a long time, if ever. So I think the blueprint is there. I think the players he's brought through as well, other managers wouldn't have given some of these players a chance. You look at Ogbene there, he's playing with Rotherham. Would he have got a call up under a different type of manager? I don't think so. Would Gavin Bazunu have got his chance under anyone else bar Kenny? I don't think so. Bamadelli, loads of examples of players that maybe weren't on the radar for kind of the casual Ireland fan, and Kenny's given them their chance, and they've been absolutely top notch. So I think he's the man for the job 100%, and I'm absolutely delighted he's got the new contract.
Yeah, I certainly concur on that note. And once again, thanks a million, Kieran, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope that you're licking your wounds after tomorrow night, that the Treaty United defeat Longford Town. But hopefully it'll be a better occasion goals-wise than we have predicted anyway, that's for sure. But once again, thanks, Kieran, for joining us, and we hope to hear from you throughout the season.
Yeah, hopefully I'm not driving all the way for an 0-0 draw, especially given the price of diesel at the minute. I'll have to go and fill a wheelbarrow up with some cash here now before I go and fill up the tank, I think. So